Have you ever just completely rolled your eyes at someone who is, incredibly, almost annoyingly passionate about something?
Oh, absolutely. I think we all have at some point.
Right. Like maybe it's that one coworker who treats a basic spreadsheet formatting update like they just cured a major disease.
Yeah. And you're just sitting there mentally checking out of the meeting.
Exactly. You feel this strain, almost icy wave of irritation just wash right over you.
It's a very specific feeling.
It is. Or on the flip side, have you ever found yourself getting furiously, intensely defensive in a debate over a seemingly minor topic?
Oh, the kind of argument where your heart starts racing out of nowhere.
Yeah, your face gets hot, you get flushed, and then 10 minutes later you're standing in your kitchen wondering, like, why did I even care so much?
Why was I defending the historically accurate timeline of a fictional sci-fi universe, right?
Yes.
Or the absolute quote-unquote correct way to load a dishwasher.
Right, because it feels completely irrational in hindsight. It really does. And I feel like the default human reaction is to just brush those moments off, you know?
We do. We completely write them off.
We tell ourselves we were just in a bad mood, or maybe we didn't get enough sleep.
Or we just blame the other person. We say they were just being particularly grating that day.
Exactly. We categorize these reactions as just like glitches in our emotional system.
But the thing is, they aren't glitches at all.
And that is exactly what we are getting into today. Because what if those moments aren't just random mood swings or the byproduct of a bad cup of coffee?
Psychologically speaking, they are actually roadmaps.
Roadmaps. I love that. So in today's deep dive, we are looking at how these sudden, irrational feeling emotional spikes or sudden emotional drops are highly specific signals.
They're deeply coded signals pointing directly to your hidden talents, your unfulfilled potential, and your absolute deepest core values.
We're talking about that jealousy, that icy defensiveness, the overwhelming urge to argue.
And even the tendency to just sit in a meeting and stay completely silent.
Right. So the mission for you, the listener, as we go through this deep dive, is to decode these everyday emotional responses in real time.
Because if you stop treating these behaviors as character flaws, which is what society usually does.
Like labeling someone as cold or overly argumentative.
Exactly. If you stop doing that, you begin to realize they're actually vital diagnostic tools.
They're complex ego defense mechanisms, right? And signals from our subconscious.
Yeah, and if you know how to read the telemetry of your own frustration or your own silence, you can unlock an incredible level of self-awareness.
The kind of self-awareness that most people spend decades in therapy trying to achieve.
Truly. It's a game changer.
Okay, let's unpack this. We want to give you the decoder ring for your own brain today.
So you can discover the hidden value you possess, but might be completely overlooking.
Precisely because your mind is playing some very clever evolutionary tricks on you.
Our brains are very good at tricking us.
They really are. So, to start us off, let's look at the very foundation of our self-worth, which is our natural talents.
The things we're inherently good at.
Right. And psychologically, there's this fascinating phenomenon where we are usually the absolute last ones to notice what we are actually good at.
It's a huge cognitive blind spot.
It is. So why does the brain hide our own strengths from us?
Well, it comes down to a fundamental quirk in human neurology and how we actually form memories.
Okay, lay it on me.
True talent hides in what feels too normal. If you can do something as naturally as breathing without any memory of grueling, agonizing effort, you undervalue it.
You're just psychologically wired to undervalue it.
Yeah. Your baseline assumption becomes, well, if this is this easy for me, it must be exactly this easy for everyone else.
Wow. That is so counterintuitive, but it makes perfect sense when you think about how we react to compliments.
Think about the last time you got praised for something you did effortlessly.
Like diffusing a really tense argument between two friends or perfectly organizing a chaotic itinerary.
Right. What is your immediate knee-jerk reaction?
I always just say, oh, it was nothing. Anyone could do this.
Exactly. You literally bat the compliment away like it's a mosquito.
You do. You just bat it away. And why is that? Is it just false modesty?
No, it's not false modesty at all. It's tied to what psychologists sometimes call the effort heuristic.
The effort heuristic. What does that mean?
The human mind implicitly equates value with suffering.
Really? Value with suffering.
Yeah, we have this collective, almost mythological assumption that only skills acquired through immense struggle and late nights are truly valuable.
Like the whole blood, sweat, and tears mentality.
Exactly. And let's look at the biology of it. Memory formation is a biochemically expensive process for the brain.
Expensive how? Like it takes calories.
Literally, yes. The brain only wants to expend the calories to encode a memory if there was significant friction or danger.
Oh, so you can survive it next time.
Precisely. It encodes the struggle so you learn from it.
So if there's no struggle, the brain just doesn't bother hitting record.
In a metaphorical sense, yes. When you perform an action that aligns perfectly with your natural aptitudes, there's very little cognitive friction.
Because it's just so easy for you.
Right. Because you didn't suffer, your brain doesn't register the output as an achievement. It just registers it as standard operating procedure.
Wow. So when someone praises you for it, you feel like an imposter.
Yeah, you think, you're praising me for walking across the room. I didn't do any work.
But wait, let me push back on that because I think this hits a nerve for a lot of people listening.
Sure, go ahead.
Shouldn't hard work mean something? I mean, if we just rely on what's easy for us, aren't we just being lazy?
I hear that a lot.
Right. Our entire modern culture, especially the corporate world, is built on the idea of the grind, pushing through adversity, the 10,000-hour rule.
The hustle culture, yeah.
Yeah. If I just say, I'm only going to value what flows naturally from me without effort, isn't that a one-way ticket to stagnation?
It's a very common trap to view it as an either-or scenario. We aren't saying that effort is meaningless or that grit doesn't matter.
Okay, so where does effort fit in?
What we need to be incredibly wary of is using effort as the only metric for value.
Because then we miss the baseline talent.
Exactly. When you solely measure your worth by how much you bled for something, you are completely blinded to your baseline gifts.
Give me an example of how that works mathematically, like in our heads.
Think of it this way. Effort is the multiplier, but your natural talent is the base number.
Okay, I'm following.
If your natural talent in a specific area is a 10 and you apply an effort level of 2, your output is 20.
Right. Easy math.
But if your natural talent is a 1 and you apply a massive effort level of 10, your output is still only 10.
Oh, wow. You suffered immensely more, but you achieved less.
Exactly. And because you suffered more for the output of 10, your brain tricks you into thinking it's your most valuable asset.
Well, you're completely ignoring the area where you scored a 20 while barely breaking a sweat.
That's the tragedy of the effort heuristic. You take pride in the painful mediocrity and ignore the effortless mastery.
That is deeply convicting.
The effort is still required to take that baseline 10 and turn it into 100. But if you don't even recognize the baseline talent...
Because it didn't hurt to discover it.
Right. If you don't recognize it, you're leaving your greatest natural resources entirely untapped.
I love this, and it makes me think of the old cliche about a fish not knowing what water is.
That's a perfect metaphor.
But if we really look at that metaphor, it's not just that the fish is surrounded by water. It's that the fish's entire physiological structure, its scales, its shape, its gills, is perfectly adapted to minimize drag in that specific environment.
Yes. The fish is a biological miracle of fluid dynamics.
But if you ask the fish about its aquatic skills, it would have no idea what you're talking about.
It can't possibly measure a skill. It can't even feel itself executing because there is zero resistance.
Zero drag.
I'm glad you brought up fluid dynamics because that takes the analogy from a cliche to a really accurate model of cognitive processing.
How so?
Talent is, quite literally, a lack of cognitive drag.
A lack of cognitive drag. I need you to unpack that a bit more.
When you are operating in your area of natural talent, the electrical signals in your brain are traveling down superhighways that are heavily myelinated.
Heavily myelinated.
Yeah, meaning they are insulated for speed and efficiency. There's no traffic jam. There's no friction.
So you don't feel the water because your brain is designed to slice right through it?
Exactly. You don't feel the effort because the biological infrastructure is already perfect.
Okay, so if we can't feel our own cognitive superhighways, how do we identify them? How do we find our water?
You have to outsource your self-awareness, at least initially.
Outsource it, like ask other people.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
You have to actively let go of the assumption that only painful effort has value, and you have to start objectively logging how others receive your normal actions.
So it requires a shift from internal feeling to external observation.
Right. When someone is amazed by your ability to immediately spot the flaw in a business plan, or your knack for making new people feel instantly comfortable at a party.
You need to stop dismissing their amazement.
Exactly. Don't say, oh, anyone could do that. Listen to them.
So for you listening right now, I want you to do a mental audit. Think about your workplace, your friend group, your family dynamics over the last 6 months.
What is the one thing people consistently thank you for or compliment you on?
Yeah, that thing that makes you feel slightly awkward because you think, that was literally no big deal. It took me 5 seconds.
Because according to the mechanics of the human brain, that specific thing, that no big deal action, is your hidden talent.
It's your highest value asset.
And once you accept that you're easy as someone else is impossible, the entire game changes.
You stop trying to force yourself to be good at the things that cause you massive cognitive drag.
And you start intentionally leveraging your baseline mastery. You move from accidental competence to intentional strategy.
That is huge. Just totally reframing how we value ourselves.
It really is the foundation of self-actualization.
Okay, so if our brains are hardwired to completely ignore our own effortless talents, it makes perfect sense that our egos would absolutely panic when we see someone else flaunting theirs.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The ego does not like being upstaged.
Which explains that bizarre, icy reaction we get when a friend or a coworker suddenly announces a new passion.
Right. If we ignore our own gifts, how do our brains react when we are confronted with someone else who is visibly, loudly displaying their success?
Let's talk about the cold reaction, because this happens all the time.
The cold reaction is one of the most misunderstood emotional responses we have as humans.
So picture the scenario. You are sitting in a meeting, or maybe having coffee with a friend.
And they are speaking passionately about a new project, a hobby, or a massive goal they are chasing.
Their eyes are lit up. They're so excited.
And instead of feeling inspired or even just conventionally happy for them, you feel this sudden, very visceral, icy wave of detachment.
You completely check out. You might even feel a little patronizing or condescending toward their enthusiasm.
Yeah, exactly.
It's this internal voice that just goes, ugh, dial it back. Who cares? It feels almost involuntary. Why does the brain throw a wet blanket over someone else's fire?
There are two distinct psychological triggers for this, and they operate on completely different levels of the mind.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first reason is actually fairly benign, and it comes down to cognitive familiarity and dopamine.
Dopamine, like the brain's reward system.
Exactly. The human mind is an absolute dopamine addict, and one of the primary triggers for dopamine release is novelty.
Right. When we encounter new information, new ideas, or new paradigms.
The brain rewards us with a chemical hit to encourage learning. It wants us to pay attention.
But if you feel that cold detachment when someone is passionately explaining something.
The first possibility is simply that you already possess the knowledge they are so excited about.
Oh, I see. So because you already know it, there's no novelty.
Which means no dopamine hit.
Right. If a colleague is enthusiastically explaining a market trend that you completely internalized and strategized around 3 years ago, your brain lacks the freshness required to generate an excited emotional response.
You are actually a step ahead of them in that specific cognitive field.
To them, it's a massive revelation. To you, it's mundane reality.
So the coldness isn't malice. It's just a lack of neurochemical reward.
Which is actually a surprisingly positive framing. It means your lack of enthusiasm in that specific moment isn't because you're a grumpy, cynical person.
Right. It's because you're actually an expert in that area, maybe without even fully recognizing your own expertise.
Oh, wow. It ties right back to our first point about ignoring our talents.
It does. It's your brain signaling that you have already mapped this territory.
Okay, I like that first reason. It lets me off the hook a bit. But then we get to the second reason for the cold reaction, and man, this one requires some real psychological bravery to confront.
It really does.
Yeah.
This is where the ego defense mechanisms come out to play.
Tell me about the ego defenses. What are we defending against?
This is what we might call the mirror of ideals, and it is rooted deeply in the psychological theory of cognitive dissonance.
Cognitive dissonance, that's when you hold two conflicting beliefs, right?
Exactly. The mind's primary directive, even above seeking novelty, is self-protection. It has to protect your concept of self.
Okay.
The second reason you might feel that sudden icy detachment is that the other person is actively, visibly living out your unfulfilled ideal.
Oof, that stings just to hear. Okay, let's break down the mechanics of that. What exactly is happening in the brain when we see someone doing what we secretly want to do?
Let's use a hypothetical. Let's say you have a deeply held, perhaps unconscious desire to write a book.
Okay, a very common dream.
But you've never started it because you're afraid of failure.
Right.
It feels too big, too scary.
So you just keep putting it off.
Right. Then your friend sits down at coffee and passionately tells you about the novel they just finished writing.
Oh, no.
Suddenly your brain is holding two conflicting realities. Reality A, I want to be a writer, but I am not taking action.
And reality B, my friend took action and achieved the thing I want.
Yes, holding both of these realities simultaneously creates a state of intense psychological discomfort. That is cognitive
Because
dissonance.
it highlights your own failure to act. It forces you to look in the mirror.
And looking in the mirror hurts. Acknowledging their achievement in an area you desperately desire forces you to face a very painful, vulnerable reality about your own lack of progress or courage.
And the brain does not like psychological pain.
It hates it. So it deploys a defense mechanism to resolve the dissonance.
What's the easiest way for the brain to resolve that dissonance?
The fastest, easiest way is to devalue the other person's achievement.
Wow. So the coldness, the sudden disinterest, is an active defense mechanism. It's a shield.
It is an incredibly efficient, unconscious shield. The mask of indifference protects your ego.
Because if you admit that their passionate pursuit is amazing, valuable, and brave,
You simultaneously have to admit that you are failing to be brave in your own life.
so your brain protects you by deciding, actually, writing a novel is kind of a pretentious, silly thing to do anyway, and I don't really care about it.
Exactly. You tell yourself, it's not that I'm scared, it's that I'm above it.
That is wild. You are deploying rationalization to protect your self-concept.
It's a very common human behavior.
I'm thinking of a real-world analogy for this. It's like you're sitting on your couch eating potato chips, and you watch out the window as someone runs by, training for a marathon.
Okay, I like where this is going.
You see them looking strong and disciplined, and your brain's immediate knee-jerk reaction is to say, you know what? Running on pavement is actually terrible for your knees.
Right. They are going to need joint replacement surgery by age 50.
Exactly. You tell yourself, I am actually making the smarter, medically superior choice by sitting here eating these chips.
I love that analogy because it perfectly highlights the absurdity of the rationalization, but also its internal logic.
It has a twisted logic to it.
To your ego, if the marathon runner is a fool destroying their knees, your choice to sit on the couch miraculously transforms from laziness into the intellectually superior, healthier move.
You diminish their achievement to elevate your own inaction.
It completely neutralizes the threat to your self-esteem.
But let me ask you this, because I think anyone listening to this is probably mentally reviewing their recent interactions and feeling a little guilty right now.
Tough mirror to look into.
If our default reaction to someone else's success or passion is to either be bored because we know better or defensive and dismissive because we're insecure,
Yeah.
doesn't this just mean we are inherently jealous, petty creatures? It paints a pretty grim picture of human nature.
It's crucial that we don't moralize this psychological response.
So you shouldn't feel bad about it.
These are evolutionary adaptations. We shouldn't label the brain as petty for doing exactly what it evolved to do.
Which is to protect you from emotional pain that could paralyze you.
Exactly. The goal here isn't to walk around feeling guilty about your natural defensiveness.
Yeah. So what is the goal?
The goal is to elevate your consciousness above the instinct. You want to use that cold feeling as a diagnostic tool, much like we discussed using effortless actions to find hidden talents.
Okay, so we take the guilt out of it. We view it as a dashboard warning light. How do we practically use that warning light?
By investigating the coldness instead of just blindly accepting the rationalization.
How do you investigate it in the moment?
When you feel that unexpected icy detachment while someone is speaking, you have to pause the internal monologue that is judging them.
You have to catch yourself doing it.
Yes. And instead, ask yourself a very difficult, very revealing question. Am I feeling cold right now because I genuinely already know this material intimately? Or am I feeling cold because I secretly, desperately want what they have?
Wow. Do I know this or do I want it? That requires radical honesty.
It does, but the payoff is massive. When you trace the coldness back to its source, it loses its power as a defense mechanism.
Because you've named the monster in the closet.
The cognitive dissonance resolves itself not through delusion, but through truth.
So for you listening, the next time you find yourself internally rolling your eyes at a colleague who is super excited about leading a new initiative, or a friend who won't stop talking about their new fitness routine,
Don't use that negative reaction as a reason to attack yourself or to criticize them behind their back.
treat that moment of irritation as a perfectly polished mirror. It is reflecting exactly what you truly want in life, but have been too afraid or too comfortable to pursue.
It's not about them at all. It's entirely about you.
That is just so profound. And once you acknowledge that unfulfilled desire, the coldness usually just dissipates, doesn't it?
It does. You might actually find yourself asking them for advice, moving from passive, icy defense into active pursuit of your own ideals.
Okay, so we've explored the cold reaction freezing up and deploying apathy as a shield.
Right, the freeze response.
But human emotions are a spectrum, and sometimes we go in the exact opposite direction. Sometimes, instead of going cold, we get unexpectedly, intensely heated.
We flip from apathetic to fiercely argumentative.
We feel this overwhelming urge to jump in and correct someone or debate them until we're blue in the face.
The fight response.
Psychologically, what triggers the brain to flip that switch from icy shield to flaming sword?
This is where we get into the architecture of our core beliefs. The urge to fiercely argue, when it seems disproportionate to the context, is absolute proof of hidden passion and deeply embedded values.
Proof of hidden passion, okay.
If we look at this neurologically, we are dealing with the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for processing threats and triggering the fight or flight response.
Right, the lizard brain, the oldest part of our processing center.
Exactly. For our ancient ancestors, a threat meant a literal tiger in the bushes.
Very straightforward threat.
But for modern humans, whose survival depends entirely on complex social structures, our brains have adapted.
So social threats feel like physical threats.
They do. Our brains perceive threats to our social standing, our identity, and our core beliefs with the exact same biological intensity as a physical predator.
Wow. So a threat to a deeply held belief triggers the same adrenaline rush as a physical attack.
It does. Which means, logically, if you truly, fundamentally did not care about a topic, your amygdala would stay perfectly quiet.
You would stay silent.
You just let the other person talk, because their words would have no emotional resonance, no threat level for you.
The very act of wanting to interject, of feeling your blood pressure rise and your face flush, means there is a non-negotiable value inside your identity that is being actively threatened or activated by their words.
That makes total sense. People with unmoved hearts don't even find a reason to argue.
Like, if someone confidently tells me that the history of medieval agricultural tools is a complete waste of academic study, I'm not going to argue with them.
Right, because you don't care.
I have zero emotional investment in medieval farming. My heart rate isn't going up. I just say, yeah, maybe you're right.
Because there is no core value attached to a plow in your psychological framework.
But let's say someone attacks a principle you hold intimately dear.
Let's say someone suggests that taking credit for a subordinate's work is just smart business.
And let's say your core foundational value is fairness or integrity or protecting the vulnerable.
Suddenly, you aren't just having a theoretical business discussion. Your brain perceives their comment as a direct attack on the structural integrity of your worldview.
You have an overwhelming biological urge to correct them, to defend the territory of your identity.
It's the friction of two core values colliding.
The friction of two core values colliding, that is a great phrase.
And that friction generates massive heat.
Which is why we get so flushed and angry.
What's fascinating is that the heat of an argument isn't just blind rage, even if it feels chaotic in the moment.
There's a structure to the madness.
By tracing why a specific comment triggered you to argue, you can reverse engineer your own foundational beliefs.
So we shouldn't be ashamed of getting emotional or defensive in these specific moments.
Society constantly tells us that showing emotion in a debate means you've lost, or that you're being irrational.
But from a psychological standpoint, this emotional movement is the ultimate proof of your individuality.
It is the definitive proof that you actually stand for something.
I have to push back on behalf of the listener here, though, because we live in the real world.
Okay, let's hear it.
Society constantly tells us to keep a cool head. We read endless articles about emotional intelligence and remaining stoic.
That's true. Emotional regulation is heavily pushed.
If I am in a boardroom and a colleague triggers a core value of mine and I get flushed and riled up and start fiercely arguing with them, that is almost universally seen as unprofessional.
It's seen as disruptive, definitely.
Are we saying that we should just let the amygdala take the wheel and start yelling at people at work because it proves our individuality?
That is a critical distinction to make. We have to separate the internal recognition of the emotion from the external behavioral response.
Okay, so we don't just start screaming in the boardroom.
No, you should not let the amygdala take the wheel and start screaming in a boardroom. Unchecked aggression is a failure of the prefrontal cortex to regulate the emotional center.
So what are we advocating for here?
What we are advocating for here is internal auditing. The goal isn't to verbally destroy the person who triggered you. The goal is to use the anger as a diagnostic compass.
Okay, so how do we practically use anger as a compass without ruining our careers.
You take that flushed, multi-minute feeling, that massive spike in adrenaline, and you step back from the immediate confrontation.
You buy yourself time.
You say, that's an interesting perspective. Let me think on that. And then privately, maybe in a journal or on a walk or just in a quiet moment of reflection, you ask yourself the auditing question.
What's the auditing question?
What exactly did they step on that I care so deeply about?
You audit the trigger.
You audit the trigger.
Yeah.
Putting those fiery feelings into specific words clarifies your personal axis.
It reveals the load-bearing pillars by which you operate.
If a colleague's offhand comment about cutting corners on a safety report makes you furiously angry, it's not just about that one report.
It's because your core value of craftsmanship or your deep-seated belief in human safety over profit was just violated.
Recognizing that gives you immense, crystalline clarity on who you are, what kind of work you need to be doing, and what kind of environment you require to be fulfilled.
That is such a powerful reframe. So the urge to argue isn't a sign of immaturity or a lack of emotional control.
It is a flare going up from your subconscious, illuminating what actually matters to you in the dark.
Exactly. And conversely, if you do an audit of your life and you find that you never want to argue about anything, that absolutely nothing ever triggers that heat in your chest.
It might be a very stark warning sign.
It might mean that you haven't yet discovered what your core values are.
Or worse, that you've suppressed them entirely to conform to your environment.
Wow. If you never get mad, you might not know who you are yet. That's a heavy thought to sit with.
It is, but it's essential for self-discovery.
Okay, so we've explored the loud, fiery, highly visible reactions. We've talked about the people who argue.
The extroverted processing of emotion.
But now I want to pivot and explore the exact opposite end of the communication spectrum. I want to talk about the quiet people.
The introverted processors.
The ones who sit in that same heated boardroom meeting or at the chaotic family dinner table and just watch and nod and say almost nothing.
They are often heavily misunderstood.
In a modern culture that is so obsessively loud, what is actually happening in the minds of the people who choose silence?
This brings us to one of the most persistent and damaging cognitive biases in our society. We have a severe bias toward extroverted processing streams.
We really do. The loudest person in the room often gets the most credit.
We fundamentally mistakenly equate word count and speed of response with thought depth.
When we see a quiet person in a meeting, our unconscious bias assumes they have nothing to say.
That they aren't paying attention, or even that they lack the intellectual horsepower to keep up with the fast talkers.
We assume silence is an empty room.
We do, but neurologically and psychologically, that is entirely backwards.
Backwards. How so?
In reality, highly introverted processors or deep thinkers are often managing a massive cognitive load. They aren't empty, they are overflowing.
So they're not just zoning out.
Far from it. They are evaluating multiple perspectives simultaneously, weighing historical precedents, spotting future contradictions, and predicting secondary and tertiary outcomes long before they ever formulate a sentence.
For them, silence is not a void. It is a state of incredibly dense, highly packed, pressurized thought.
Exactly. It's an active state, not a passive one.
I have an analogy for this, and I want to see if it holds up to this psychology. Think about a computer.
Okay, I'm with you.
Sometimes you look at a computer screen and it's completely frozen. Nothing is moving.
Right, spinning beach ball of death.
Exactly. Now, sometimes the screen is frozen because the machine is broken, the hard drive crashed, and there's nothing happening inside.
The empty room scenario.
But other times, and anyone who edits media knows this, the screen freezes because the computer is trying to render a massive, highly complex 90-minute 4K video file with visual effects.
Yes.
The internal processor is working at 100% capacity, burning so incredibly hot, processing billions of data points, that it literally does not have the bandwidth to update the external display.
The quiet person isn't a broken computer. They are rendering a 4K thought.
Exactly.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize cognitive load because it perfectly captures the hidden effort. The outward stillness is a requirement for the inward velocity.
The outward stillness is a requirement for the inward velocity. I love that.
And this highlights the inherent burden of the deep thinker. The deeper you look into a problem, the more variables you allow into your rendering process. The harder it is to give a quick, simple, soundbite answer.
Because a simple answer would be inaccurate.
Exactly. People who offer immediate, rapid-fire conclusions are very often utilizing a heuristic approach. They're looking at a situation from only one single familiar angle.
They see a flat 2D image, which is very fast to process and speak about.
The quiet person is trying to render a three-dimensional object with shadows, textures, and hidden sides.
The silence is simply the temporal cost of forging a multifaceted, nuanced answer.
It takes time to build that model in your head.
Okay. The psychology of that makes sense, and it's very validating.
It is, especially for the introverts listening.
But practically speaking, if you are the person rendering the 4K video, how do you survive in a world, especially corporate environments, that overwhelmingly rewards the fast 2D thinkers?
That is the big question.
Because the person who jumps in first with a half-baked, flat idea usually gets the credit. They dictate the direction of the meeting, while the person rendering the complex, nuanced solution gets passed over because they didn't speak up in the first 30 seconds.
You've hit on a massive structural problem in modern organizations. Susan Cain explored this brilliantly in her work on the extrovert ideal.
Our institutions are designed for the fast talkers.
They absolutely are.
Yeah.
So how do we survive and change this dynamic?
Yeah. What's the strategy?
If you are the quiet person, the very first step is internal validation. You must aggressively protect your own self-worth against the bias of the room.
You have to recognize your silence as a symptom of intellectual depth, not inadequacy.
Stop beating yourself up for not being a rapid-fire debater. Your value comes from the quality, the structural integrity of the synthesized thought you eventually produce, not the reaction time.
You have to own your processing speed, but how do you communicate that to a room full of fast talkers who are getting impatient?
You use what we call placeholder communication.
Placeholder communication, like a save point.
Exactly. You don't have to give the final answer immediately, but you do need to signal that the computer is rendering.
Ah, so you don't just sit there frozen.
Right. You can say, this is a highly complex issue with a few competing variables. I have some thoughts, but I want to map them out properly. I'll send a brief to the team by 3 p.m.
Oh, that is so smooth. You've commanded the space, validated the complexity of the problem, and bought yourself the rendering time without looking disengaged.
That is incredibly practical. I'm rendering, give me until 3 p.m.
Now, what if you're the fast talker? Let's say you're a manager or a partner in a relationship who processes out loud very quickly.
You have to be very careful not to steamroll.
How should you be interacting with the quiet thinkers so you don't crush them or miss out on their insights?
If you are the fast talker, you have to realize that a quiet person's lack of immediate verbal output is not a lack of engagement, and it is certainly not agreement.
If you bulldoze them, you will win the meeting, but you will lose the best ideas.
You have to intentionally architect space for them, give them the time to render.
How do you do that practically?
Instead of demanding an immediate answer in a high-pressure, rapid-fire meeting, restructure your communication. Send the agenda and the complex problems 24 hours in advance.
Give them the files to render early.
Exactly. Or, in the meeting, try saying, I've been doing a lot of talking, and I know you like to view things from multiple angles. I'd love to hear your synthesized thoughts on this once you've had some time to digest it.
You essentially build a track for their specific type of train.
Yes. And I guarantee you, the insights you get back from the deep processors when you give them the proper runway will often be far more robust, bulletproof, and innovative than the quick, reactionary answers generated in the heat of the moment.
We have to respect different cognitive metabolisms. It's vital for a functioning team, or a marriage, or a society.
It's the only way to get the best out of everyone.
Which actually brings us beautifully to the grand finale of this exploration. We've looked at all these isolated components of human psychology.
We've covered a lot of ground today.
We've talked about ignoring our easy talents,
Yeah.
using cold defensiveness as an ego shield, using hot arguments as a compass for core values, and understanding the dense processing of silent people.
The whole spectrum of cognitive reactions.
How do we pull all of these incredibly diverse, sometimes conflicting cognitive styles and emotional reactions together? How do we integrate them to actually succeed and build something meaningful in life?
To integrate all of this, we have to look at the macro dynamic of human cognition.
The big picture.
Historically and academically, we often divide the world into two camps. The humanities, which represents emotion, empathy, unstructured creativity, and human feeling.
And the sciences, which represents logic, rational reasoning, structural thought, and hard data.
Right. It's the classic left brain versus right brain, the math nerd versus the theater kid, logic versus emotion. We tend to force people to pick a team.
We do, but it is a false and deeply damaging dichotomy, isn't it?
It absolutely is. If we want to truly actualize our hidden talents and navigate our emotional roadmaps, We have to understand that logical reasoning and the ability to understand human feelings are not opposing forces.
They are the two load-bearing pillars of a functioning worldview.
Let's play with an analogy here because I think pillars is getting us closer than the old cliches.
Okay, I used to think of it like a car. Logic is the steering wheel, emotion is the engine, but that still feels a bit mechanical. Let's think about architecture. Let's say you are building a skyscraper.
Okay, I like where this is going.
The sciences, the pure logic, math, and structural reasoning represent the steel I-beams, the foundation, the load-bearing walls. It is the undeniable physics of the building.
Right, the non-negotiable structural integrity.
If you don't have that, the building physically collapses and people die. But the humanities, the emotion, the empathy, the art that represents the interior design, the flow of the rooms, the lighting, the purpose of the spaces.
Yes, the human element.
If you build a skyscraper with only pure logic, only steel beams and concrete, with zero thought given to human emotion, comfort, or aesthetic, you haven't built a home or an office. You've built a cage.
It's structurally sound, but it is a miserable, cold place for a human being to exist.
But conversely, if you build a skyscraper using only the humanities, pure emotion, just piles of beautiful silk cushions, stunning artwork, and good intentions, with zero understanding of load-bearing logic.
The minute the wind blows, the entire thing collapses into dust.
Exactly.
That is a phenomenal architectural translation of cognitive integration.
Thank you. I've been workshopping it.
Relying solely on cold logic while dismissing the messy reality of human emotion leads to a dangerously narrow, often cruel worldview. It's the steel cage.
And relying purely on raw emotion while ignoring logical consequences and structural realities leads to absolute chaos and instability. It's the collapsing cushions.
The danger we face in our daily lives, and this ties everything we've talked about together, is the problem of the single measuring stick.
Explain the single measuring stick.
When we discover what we are naturally good at, when we finally recognize that hidden talent we discussed in the beginning, whether it's the highly logical analysis of steel beams or the highly empathetic communication of the interior design,
We have a very strong subconscious tendency to use our specific skill as the universal metric to judge the worth of everyone else.
oh wow, so we weaponize our own talents against people who operate differently.
Precisely. We use our talent to create a hierarchy where we are at the top.
Because it feels good to be at the top.
If you are highly logical, you look at emotional people and dismiss them as weak, irrational, or chaotic. You judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree.
And if you are highly empathetic and emotionally attuned, you look at highly logical people and dismiss them as cold, robotic, or lacking humanity.
You deploy that cold defense mechanism we talked about to protect your worldview from theirs.
We just stay in our silos.
We do. And this is where true long-term success is decided.
The ultimate marker of success isn't just having a hidden talent, and it's not even just applying hard work to that talent.
It is the intersection of talent, effort, and what psychologists call cognitive flexibility.
Cognitive flexibility. Your learning efficiency is entirely determined by your ability to be open to how completely different alien minds operate.
But practically, can we actually hold both? Aren't we genetically or environmentally wired to heavily favor one over the other?
Can a deeply logical person truly integrate the emotional humanity side, or are they just faking it to get along?
We absolutely have natural biases. You will always have a dominant cognitive style. The goal isn't to become perfectly symmetrical and lose your unique identity.
So what is the goal then?
The goal is dialectical thinking, the ability to hold two opposing truths in your mind and synthesize them.
True intellectual maturity is encountering a viewpoint that is completely opposite to your natural wiring, say, a highly emotional, passion-driven argument when you are a strictly logical, data-driven person.
And instead of leading with denial, instead of letting the amygdala trigger an argument or the ego deploy an icy shield, you hold the alien perspective in your mind.
You suspend the defense mechanism.
You suspend the defenses and you ask, what can I extract from this? What piece of this alien perspective makes my own worldview more complete? What do they see that my brain is naturally filtering out?
When you start fighting the perspectives that challenge you and start synthesizing them, your own natural talents are magnified exponentially.
You become deeply adaptable. And in a world that is constantly shifting, cognitive flexibility is the ultimate survival trait.
It is the soil in which your hidden talents can actually grow into lasting mastery.
This has been such a profound journey today. Let's bring all of these threads together.
It's a lot to process, but it's so vital.
This deep dive has revealed that our minds are constantly leaving psychological breadcrumbs for us to follow if we just learn how to read the terrain.
The things you brush off as too easy, the skills you don't even think to put on a resume because they feel as natural as breathing, those are your hidden talents, operating with zero cognitive drag.
The moments you feel inexplicably cold or dismissive towards someone else's enthusiasm, those are not random moods. They are maps pointing directly to your unfulfilled ideals, masked by cognitive dissonance.
The times you desperately want to argue and get flushed with anger, those reveal the load-bearing pillars of your non-negotiable core values.
And those moments of heavy silence, whether from you or someone across the table, might just be periods of the deepest, most complex 4K rendering thought.
Every single emotional reaction is data. Nothing is wasted if you choose to examine it rather than just react to it.
So, my challenge to you, the listener, for this coming week is to pay incredibly close attention to your own emotional friction.
Don't just brush off your annoyance at a coworker, your sudden boredom, or your urge to argue with your spouse.
Stop, step back, and ask yourself what those feelings are trying to show you about your own hidden roadmap. Audit the trigger.
And to build on that challenge, I want to leave you with one final, slightly uncomfortable thought to mull over.
Okay, hit us with it.
We've discussed at length how your negative reactions, like feeling cold or defensive towards someone's enthusiasm, are actually mirrors reflecting your own unfulfilled desires.
Right.
If that psychological premise holds true, consider this. The person in your life who you currently find the absolute most irritating, the person whose success or passion or very existence bothers you the most right now, might actually be the most accurate, living blueprint of your own unfulfilled potential.
Wow.
What is your irritation trying to teach you about yourself today?
Oof. That is a question that's going to stick with me for a long, long time. The person you find most irritating is your blueprint.
The psychological X-ray machine for the mind might be murky, but the image is definitely coming into sharp focus.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning, keep exploring the hidden mechanics of your own mind, and we'll see you next time.